Can we wait
Wait for what?
for like 1 few days?
That's okay. You can put them on the spot.
Please do.
But welcome back to midweek, everybody. It is Wednesday. It's been dark for like 6 hours now. Yeah, it's
Okay.
getting to the end of the semester. But let's start with some good news. Does anybody have good news? Said kids didn't yet go home.
After court, they didn't go to their home.
Okay. Yay, Justice Department. Other good news? Lauren is still alive.
We had a good study with Abby last night.
Good study with Abby, okay?
Yeah, it was a good study and I think, she's really just kind of learning who God is, which is really cool to see.
Yep.
And yeah, so it was a good study. I'm pretty pumped about it. We're talking about baptism and resurrection next week, so. it's pretty
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Anybody online? Any good news?
Yeah, I got
Nothing from us. Good. Okay, go for it.
today the wood chip company came by and dumped a massive load of wood chips in my backyard. So I'm one step closer to having my my food forest in the backyard.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are you trying to do no-till?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm excited.
It's not raw soya. What's the root stout method? Is that what it is?
I'm not certain. I'm not super familiar with, terminology and each like the names of each methods, but I'm just gonna kill the grass off with this, and when it comes time, I'm gonna plant some fruit bearing trees, like dwarf variants, ones that won't get too big, in the ground underneath the wood chips, and hopefully while the wood chips are there killing off all the grass and everything, it'll help enrich the soil underneath. So that's the goal.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. There you go, wood chips.
Woohoo!
Anybody else? Anybody else think of anything?
Oh, my boss comes back.
Is that good
I think
news?
that could be.
Is that good news, Lauren?
But I talked to my district manager, so I can step down, like I won't have to be assistant manager, I can just be, I can have people like doing all this stuff.
Is
And
that
will be
big
me.
news?
I think it's good.
That last. But we didn't, so didn't you end up working?
It's it is news that we'll see in 3 weeks whether or not it's good or bad news.
Right now, I think.
Hey.
Sorry, that happened.
Well, I have tons of good news. Today we got our check from the government for all of our campus ministry stuff, which is like, we have money to spend now, which is fantastic. What? Yeah.
From SGA.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, they've had the check since the middle of October and just never said anything, so, amen. Progress, we got money though, so, That really does go a long way to setting us up for next semester and next year in terms of just having a budget and being able to, have some funds that we can put towards really whatever, because I don't think they really check that strictly. So, other good news, it is, we're getting towards the end of the semester, which is kind of a natural slowdown. And it's really just, I think heading into the breaks, like I feel great about where our campus ministry is at, where we're heading. And it's kind of the next stage as things kind of wind down and preparing for the next season. And so we're starting to think through the calendar for next year. We're starting to think through kind of different things to start up. And so I'm really excited about one of the things that we've talked about is starting up kind of like dinners on campus and doing kind of a lesson that's really practical and geared towards like, let's go actually and do these things and having some kind of dinner. And so, yes, yeah, that's the tricky part is.
I'll be
I'm
there.
gonna say you can't order.
Lauren
food,
will
it
be
has
there
to
for
select,
comment.
so it's-
So you can order food, it's just they won't pay for it. You can use funds outside of campus funds, but
Yeah.
anyway, I digress. But just having something on campus that is, as another thing that we can invite people to, another point of contact for our disciples on campus. It's exciting to see that starting to develop and that we have a big enough group to really start to do that stuff. So, yeah.
These are the lessons are just like stuff that you can apply.
Yeah, the idea is that they will be really practical and things that it's like, let's talk about it and then let's go do it. Like we'll have some kind of activity that's geared towards actually putting that into practice.
Are you gonna do more stuff?
More stuff on campus,
Like,
Off campus?
something like that, 'cause a lot of
a
kids,
lot of kids go home.
They do.
That's like the challenging part. I mean, we'll
You can run around the village. But if you.
we'll put that one down on the list of things that we could do.
No, I was gonna say people dying, so I take it.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's exciting being at that spot where we can start things up. Before we pray, I wanted to kick it back to one of our favorite activities. By our favorite, I mean, Nico hates it and it's just fun. But I figured we'd start with a minute of silence. And just take a minute to like disconnect from the craziness of life and to just breathe. So, as long as it's silent, you can do whatever you want as long as it's silent. So I'm gonna start a timer and we will.
Daryl got so silent, he left.
They left in protest.
We're so lucky Ginny was not crying during that minute, or else I would have unmuted ourselves.
That would have been great. But before we jump into the lesson, let's pray. Dear Father God, Dad, I am so grateful for time to be together. God, time to sharpen each other, time to be guided by you, God. And I'm grateful for, the ability to start with just a time of silence, God, to slow down and slow down to your pace, God, to stop and remember that the most fundamental truth about who we are is that we are created in your image and that we can rest in that, God, that we don't need to do all these things, be all these things. We just need to simply connect with you, and everything else flows from that. God, I pray that as we talk about meeting the needs of the people around us and building great friendships and relationships, God, I pray that you will guide us, God, that you will guide us to help identify the relationships that we are meant to invest in and build. God, I pray that you give us great sensitivity to know the different stages that people are at and know how to meet their needs. God, I love you so much, and I pray all these things according to your will. Amen. Cool. So we've been talking about changing our view on evangelism. Last week we talked about the stages people go through, going from stranger to acquaintance to being a friend to being somebody who's seeking after God. And then at each stage we meet a different need, right? We show people God's love is the first step. Then we build a relationship. Then we deepen a friendship, and then we study the Bible with people. And so today we're going to focus on the first two. It's a lot to dive into all four at once. And so we're going to dive into the first two. And that's showing God's love and building a relationship with people. And I think we're really good at helping people to study the Bible. Like, we are uncomfortably good at studying the Bible with people. That isn't bad. No, the only problem is that not everyone is ready for that yet. And so typically we ask people to study the Bible, and if they're interested, we go, and if they're not interested, we go and find somebody else. And the way that we think about it is, okay, in 6 months, I'll circle back and see if they're interested in the Bible, and see if their answer changes, right? And finding people who want to study the Bible is actually a really good thing. It's like what we're meant to do. We're not meant to sit there and just wait for people to move through and move closer to God. Like, we're called to study the Bible with people. But if we're doing nothing to move that person who doesn't want to study, we're not doing anything to move them forward and move them closer to God, how can we expect them to be in a different spot 6 months from now? Like, if we're not actually helping them to see who God is, how can we expect them to just wake up one day and go, oh, I see God now. I know what God's calling me to. If somebody did that, we'd be like, you're crazy. No, but I mean, if you're thinking about golf, that would be like going golfing and coming up to the tee box with a putter, right? And it's like you come up to the tee box with a putter and you realize, oh, I have the wrong club. And then in 6 months, you come back with your putter again to see if the ball's moved. That would be ridiculous, right? And so the goal of these midweeks is to help add a couple more clubs to our spiritual golf bag, so they can be more effective in helping people move towards God. Does that make sense? Thanks. I stole it. And this starts with getting rid of our idea of evangelism, right? We're actually never called to evangelize. We're called to make disciples. And so it's not that, call it whatever you want. But I think the way that we think of evangelism is we go up and we talk to people, we go and like it's a very like active pursuit, and it's really uncomfortable for other people. Versus, I think what we want to move towards is seeing that our goal with everybody is help them move closer to God. Whether they're a disciple, whether they're a pre-disciple, whatever, we just want to help people move closer to God. We want to point them back to who God is. And so the 4 stages that we're talking about are designed to help us figure out the most appropriate way to show that person who God is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so my first point is showing God's love. Over in Titus 3. So that is, people call it sharing their faith. The idea, it comes from, the word for gospel in Greek is euangelion. It means the good news. And so the idea is to share good news, to share the gospel with people. And so if you've ever heard of, what's the word? You know,
Wow.
yeah. Totally.
Yeah, like I knew.
Whatever. But yeah, the idea of evangelism is going and seeking after people, and unfortunately, there's been a lot of bad. There's been a lot of good. It's out of a good motive, but there's been a lot of bad practice with that, where
You with the holy water and the prayer cloth that you got. I thought you were gonna say the dude outside of.
yeah, I mean, that's
Well,
right. The people who hand out Bibles on campus, right? Anybody who comes up and stops you and talks to you about the Bible, the guy who shouts at people on campus, like all of those people are evangelizing. They're trying to convert people. And again, it's not that that's out of a bad motive, but a lot of times the practicals and the way it doesn't value the relationship with the person. It values, I'm going to tell you what's true, regardless of whether or not we have a relationship. So anyway, we can talk about it later. Titus 3, starting in verse 3. It says, at one time, we too were foolish, disobedient, deceived, and enslaved by all kinds of passions and pleasures. We lived in malice and envy, being hated and hating one another. But when the kindness and love of God, our Savior, appeared, he saved us, not because of righteous things we had done, but because of his mercy. He saved us through the washing of rebirth and renewal by the Holy Spirit, whom he poured out on us generously through Jesus Christ our Savior, so that having been justified by his grace, we might become heirs, having the hope of eternal life. And so Paul, in writing to Titus here, says that God's kindness is what drives us towards God.
Yeah.
God's kindness is what drives us towards God. And so the starting point for everyone we meet should be to show them God's love. And so some people will be further along, right? Some people will want to study the Bible immediately. As I mean, the 4 of us here have all been those people who wanted to study the Bible immediately. So, but the starting point is, let's show God's love, right? Let's start with the lowest common denominator. Let's start with the simplest way to impact somebody's heart. And so our first thought should be, how can I serve this person? You know, in serving, the goal is to remove any sense of false motive or manipulation. The end goal is simply to show that person God's love. It's not to get them to come to church. It's not to get them to come to a Bible talk or to study the Bible. It's just to show them more of who God is in a personal way. Serving allows God's kindness to work on people's hearts. And are on our own. You know, that's the most powerful thing is in showing God's love, we actually understand God's love even more. We start to internalize it because we are putting it into practice. The tagline for this kind of, you know, act of kindness or servant evangelism, the tagline is demonstrating God's love by offering to do humble acts of service in Christ's name with no strings attached. And it recognizes that most people won't actually listen to what you have to say until they know that you actually care about them. And the best way to show strangers that you care is by serving them. Like it'd be weird to walk up to somebody and be like, hey man, I just wanted to let you know, I really love you. People will be like, have you been stalking me? Like what the heck? And so, but by serving people, it's a disarming way to show them, hey, I'm called by God to care about you. And so we'll do these over the course of the next couple months as we kind of figure out the calendar and plan. We'll have some dedicated times to do these things as a group, but it's also really easy to do these things individually or in small groups, in groups of like 2 or 3. And so a couple of ideas that you can do, things like shoveling snow for people. Then don't do that. Make a difference. But so you could shoveling snow, raking leaves, handing out coffee or water when it's hot out, right? Washing cars, paying for somebody's food is a great one, right? If you're in line, paying for the person behind you. Cleaning gas station bathrooms is one that they mentioned. It's like
Wait, say that again?
cleaning gas station bathrooms.
Yeah, where it's dirty.
Yes, exactly. That's the point.
It smelled like lavender. It was
Wow.
best. Like I wanted to sleep in that gas station bathroom. It was amazing.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
But that's what is the thing that people want to do the least? And let's go do that because that shows the kind of person that we want to be, right? Things like handing out lollipops or free compliments are also one that you could do. One of the stories from the books is there was a guy in Thailand that decided his way of serving the community was he was going to go find and kill wild hogs and then cook it and serve it as a meal to the entire community. And so if anybody's like hunts or is like, you know, gets a deer, we can do like a whole cookout. But that's the goal, is to find what you're already doing, find things that like you're already passionate about and find ways to make them serving opportunities. And so what skills and opportunities do you have that you can use to serve the community? How can you use your lifestyle and material possessions to serve those around you? You know, the goal here is to find simple things that we can do that just require us to show up and that trust that God's kindness will work on people's hearts. The goal is in giving away lollipops is I'm going to hand out lollipops and I'm going to trust that somebody's going to be impacted by that and they're going to move closer to God.
They're making that candy now and we won't come out and make it. They're gonna think you're
Okay.
making it. I'm just saying.
All right. Not going to hand out candy.
I'm just saying like. you want.
The reality with this is that this takes a lot longer to see the fruit. It's at least a 6 to 12 month process. Meaning we're not going to do this and, you know, the first time that we do it, we're going to have 50 people at church service or something. Like it's a slow, it builds momentum as you do it more and more. But the point isn't the fruit, it's that we reflect God's love. And so the end result is not getting people to come out to church. That's a natural byproduct of showing people who God is that they will be interested and want to come to church. But the point is not the fruit, it's to show people who God is. And so how can you actively show God's kindness in your daily life? After that, we move to the second point, which is building a relationship. And so once you've met somebody and you've talked to them, a little bit, you got to know their name, maybe you I don't know something else about them, know what they do for a living, what they're majoring in. The focus then shifts towards building a relationship. And you continue to serve and actively show who God is as you build a relationship. It's not like the first part just stops. You continue to do that as you build a friendship. And so in order to build a relationship, we have to ask questions and be willing to listen. And that is the most fundamental thing about relationships is asking questions, being willing to listen. And so we all know that. And that's actually the problem, because most of us think that we excel at listening to people and asking questions. But here's the thing, when is the last time that you gave somebody advice? Did they ask for your thoughts, or did you just give it to them? Okay, good.
I'm not a teenager.
Oh,
Bad at life.
great. Congrats. You passed the test.
She is.
But oftentimes we give advice where people haven't actually asked for advice. We have a lot of opinions and thoughts that we want to share. I get it. I have a lot of thoughts and opinions that I want to share too. But we can't build a relationship if we don't ask questions and listen. We have to develop the conviction that making people feel listened is more important than sharing what we think is the solution.
Say it again.
We have to develop the conviction that making people feel listened to is more important than sharing what we think the solution is. Over in Acts 17.
Acts 17 verse what?
Acts 17, starting in verse 24. Acts 17, verse 24, it says, "The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples built by hands. And he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything, because he himself gives all men life and breath and everything else. From one man he made every nation that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he determined the times set for them and the exact places where they should live. God did this so that men would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us." In the NET, this is a really cool translation. In the NET, verse 27 actually reads, in verse 26, it says, "From one man he made every nation of the human race to inhabit the entire earth, determining their set times and the fixed limits of the places where they would live, so that they would search for God and perhaps grope around for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us." And that visual of somebody groping around in the dark, that's the reality of what the majority of people are doing, right? What Paul is saying here is that most people are looking for God. They're trying to find him, but they are in a dark room with no lights, right? If we turned out the lights right now, yeah, it'd be terrifying, right?
Yeah.
And so what Paul is describing is most people are looking for God. They're trying to find God. They have eternity set in their hearts and they're looking for him. But they don't have a light. they can't see what they're reaching for. So what happens is they latch on to something and think, I have found God, when in reality, it's NFL football. It's, you know, a book club. It's something other than who God is. You know, most people aren't directly opposed to God. It's not like people, you know, certainly there are people who are like, I hate God and whatever. But the majority of people are not actively opposed to God and what God is doing. They're groping around in the dark looking for God, but they can't find him unless we light the way. You know, the way that we do that is through listening to them. Not pointing out their flaws, not telling them what they should do, but by humbly listening. Just by sitting with them and hearing them out. And there are 5 pitfalls that we're going to have to avoid if we're going to listen well. 5. There are 5. Number 1 is being impatient. Right? This is also called being distracted. You know, we process information 10 to 20 times faster than anyone can talk.
We process information 5 to 10 times.
10 to 20 times faster than anyone can talk, which means that as somebody's talking, we're actively thinking about things beyond what they're just saying.
Wow.
So while the other person is talking, it's easy to get distracted thinking about all the other things that we have to do, right? This is me at church on Sunday. I have about 50 things that I'm thinking through of making sure that the coffee's ready. That one's for this Sunday because we haven't had coffee yet, but making sure that the coffee's set up, making sure that all of the QR codes are set up, making sure that the slides are in the right order, right? All while trying to have a conversation with someone. It doesn't go well. Okay. Great. But it's easy to get distracted in a conversation with somebody, right? And so, do we have the patience to be fully present in our conversations? You can't listen if you are not fully attentive to the person and what they're saying. Number 2 is jumping to conclusions. You know, like we said that, you know, our brains process 10 to 20 times faster than what people say. So a lot of times, as somebody's talking, we already figure out where they're going with it. And we want to cut them off and respond. Feel less listened to than when you think you know what they mean before they've even said it. It's all right, we all have. You know, the reality is, even when we're right, it's better to ask a clarifying question than jump directly to what we assume the answer is. And so, number 2 is jumping to conclusions. Number 3 is being patronizing. You know, this is the idea of assuming kind of the parent role, like a parent-child relationship. You know, assuming the role of a wise teacher means that the person that you're interacting with is the dumb student. And so the way that we fight against that is that we recognize that we always have something to learn from other people, including non-Christians. Like in every interaction, we have something that God is trying to show us. Number 4 is getting defensive. You know, getting defensive forces people into an us versus them mindset, right? Which ends up turning the conversation into, I'm either going to win or lose. You know, our priority shifts from winning or from listening to winning, right? We want to win the conversation. We want to win the argument. And so how offendable are you? If you are easily offended, you are not very good at listening. Number 5 is becoming codependent.
Ooh.
So codependency means fostering relationships in which we take inappropriate responsibility for another person's thoughts, feelings, beliefs, or behaviors. I'm sorry, are you saying that you're feeling defensive?
I am.
Because that is one of the things that we just talked about. So, the reality is we can't make decisions for people. We have to respect their ability to decide what they want for themselves. And so not only is being codependent bad for the person that you're trying to listen to, because then all of a sudden, like, you have all sorts of feelings that are inappropriate for the relationship. It also affects your heart in ways that limits your ability to actually stay in a relationship. Because now everybody knows, well, when I spend time with this person, they attach themselves to me in an unhealthy way, and it makes them distance, creates distance. It doesn't build unity.
So like it.
So
So like it.
we'll talk about that one later. With these 5 things, there are 2 skills that we need to cultivate as well. And that's reading body language and active listening. And so only 7% of communication is verbal. 55% of it is nonverbal, and 38% of it is vocal in terms of tone and other things that have to do with not words. And so if we neglect reading body language, we miss out on half of the information that the person is communicating.
That's why texting.
That is why texting sucks.
This lady called me at the store. I was not prepared at all. She screamed at me, and I mean, like, screamed at me worse than my mom has ever screamed at me on the phone. And I could not, like there's that disconnect, because I don't know, like, she can't see what I'm doing, I can't see what she's doing. It's like it was bad, and I was like shaking, and she just like screamed at me for like 10 minutes straight, and I was,
Maybe she was an angry mom who just yelled at her kids all day. She was real tired to dinner. So not sit down.
We'll talk about one after.
but like without seeing someone, it's
Yeah.
like, it's really hard to be able to like even help them over the phone, which is
Yep.
exactly what I was trying to do. You can't.
Yeah, you
Like-
might just call
Yeah.
her in this situation.
And that's we have to be able to read other people's body language. Because that is over half of the information that they're communicating to us is nonverbal. It's not things that they're gonna say. And so we have to be able to read it in others, and we have to be aware of our own body language. Right? Understand that when our heart rate increases in a conversation, that means something. Like, that is a nonverbal signal that I'm starting to get defensive. This is one of the reasons why we want to have greeters at service. Right? We want to have people that are right near the front door, so that everyone's first interaction with someone is welcome. That it sets the tone, right? It very clearly, it's a very intentional thing, so that the first interaction that people have is, wow, these people are, the worst is when someone walks into church and we're all down at the bottom and everybody's,
What happened last time?
I wasn't there last time, so I have no clue.
Yeah.
But-
Are you talking about?
Yeah.
But it's, right, everybody's down there. And everybody's in their little groups, and everybody looks back. And then everybody goes back to the conversation. Work on that. How about that?
I shouldn't be nowhere.
But that's the goal of having. All right. I'm done. But that's the leaders is that it's a scripted first interaction that makes people feel welcome. Right? Because the reality is everybody else is also reading body language. And when they see a group of people who are all with their backs turned or look at them and then turn away, that communicates to them, you're not welcomed in our conversation, right?
That's very nice.
And then the second thing is active listening, right? Active listening reassures the person that you are still listening and that you understand what they're saying, right? This is the concept of verbally communicating that you're still like, yep, yeah, that's a great point, right? Mirroring what people say. So what I'm hearing you're saying is this, right? There are tons of resources that for both of these things that can help us refine these skills. And if we really need to, we can dive into them in midweeks moving forward. But those two things are essential in actually building a relationship with someone. Because if you're not able to identify those things and you're not actively listening to them and you're not paying attention to the body language, that relationship isn't going to continue. And so we have some discussion questions. So number one, what is the biggest challenge you feel in showing God's kindness to people? Number two, which listening pitfall do you feel is the hardest to overcome? And number three, do you feel like we need a listening workshop or like a training for our region?
Are we going through like one by one?
So just generally responding.
Because I'm gonna be honest, I cannot, unless it's like physical on me, I cannot remember a question. I am not a verbal learner at all.
Send in the. You send in the cues?
And Slack.
Well, actually, it's just.
What?
You,
Yes. I did.
I should have to really be iffy, but
The middle one is which one of the pitfalls is hardest for you though? Even when it doesn't seem like I'm listening.
Any thoughts?
I can go. I think we should do a listening workshop. Because
Like-
because I suck at all five of them. And all five of them are pretty bad. And it's funny because you said you were like, most of us are like, oh, we're good at listening. And I was like, I'm good at listening. And then you said all that. And I was like, oh, not. And
Hey man, you know.
and so I think like I really do feel like I struggle with all of them. I think the one that I'm working on right now is like codependency. I think I like get like people's problems become my problems.
Yeah.
So then I want to solve and fix them. And then when they're not solved and fixed, I get way too emotionally attached. I'm like already an emotional person, so I'm emotional and like I consider myself to be pretty loyal. So then in those situations, I feel like in being a loyal person, I need to take on the other person's problems, which I'm learning is not healthy because like I can't control people. That's not how it works. Yeah.
And what happens is then we get emotionally burned out and then we completely shut down.
Yeah.
And then it takes 6 months to like recover, get back together, like, whatever time. But then we get back to it and then, 6 months later, we're emotionally burned out again. And it's like,
Sean already knows this, but I've been like, mine's like a weekly thing right now. Like it's like legit weekly. Like I cry once a week because
I didn't say that, and I was like crying.
yeah, it's been a weekly thing.
What? Like, people don't.
Yeah, it's been a weekly thing. So I would kind of struggle with that. Honestly, and to what I think I can love people more like God, I think it's just listening. Because I think those 5 things, like I'm not very patient, I'm pretty codependent, I get pretty defensive. I forget the other 2, but I'm like all of them, I think. Like I think if I had a workshop that taught me how to listen better, I feel like that would honestly help me love people more and love people better like God.
I get better at not being angry with people, and I think that's a good way to show kindness, is to not come for their neck.
is that showing them kindness or not showing them wrath?
I think it's 2 sides of the thing.
I disagree wholeheartedly.
But the pitfall, impatient, and distracted is the worst out of all of them that I have. Because I'm constantly. So it makes me feel like I have a bunch of stuff that he's done, because I have a bunch of stuff that he's done. I'm not 100% where I need to be at that moment. Like, I'm still there, but I'm not listening all the way.
I had something like,
Sure.
Struggle with it.
okay, I struggle with a lot of those, but mine is kind of that confrontation. Can't stand it, don't want anything to do with it. I will completely shut down immediately, and then I stop listening altogether. Is that defensive?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Shut it down.
See, it's like, I don't know why defensive to me is like,
Going after it.
Sounds
yeah,
aggressive.
like, yeah. Me, it's just like in my own shell, like, I'll back up and
Like or freeze.
Yeah.
Like and freeze it all.
fight or flight.
And freeze is stopping and just shutting down.
Okay.
So it's a defense, it's just not a offensive
Okay.
defense.
I guess in my mind, it's like defensive is like,
Like, who wants to?
yeah, like that.
Yeah. Yeah, but it is, I mean, even like, I think in shutting down, like, that's one of the. That also limits relationship. Right, like. You may not be running, like physically running away from them or fighting them. But you're withdrawing from, what it is the, in conversation, there's a pool of shared meaning. That when people feel accepted and, safe, they're able to contribute to the pool of shared meaning. When we feel attacked, what happens is we pull back, right? And it's, we either, we either lash out or we suppress it. Right, but what happens is when we suppress it, they've actually done studies in like different warehouses and different environments. What happens is even when we suppress it, it still comes out in other ways. And so they look at managers who are bad at confrontation, and even the people that they showed up to a warehouse, and they literally, as they're walking in, somebody's being walked out in handcuffs because they swung on the manager. And so even when people don't lash out, it's violence or silence is what it is. And so even when people don't go to violence, when they're silent about it, what happens is that their productivity tanks. And so they found across the board, bad managers who are bad at confrontation are terrible for companies, because either they have a ton of turnover, or we won't name names. But either there's a ton of turnover because people just, that is a violent way of separating yourself from the environment, or productivity tanks and the company does not move forward. So I digress.
I feel like it's good though.
This is all,
I figured out room 216 doesn't exist. I know, I in my mind, I just read 216.
Well, now you know.
Yeah.
But no, I think I feel like a workshop would be important.
Yeah.
I think with the conflict side of things, but like.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm really bad at like listening and like all these things, so I feel like that would help and then I think they go hand in hand, which I'm sure. I agree.
I do agree.
But I think they go hand in hand, because I feel like if you can't listen, it's pretty hard to also have conflicts.
Yeah.
no, in certain situations, you can rush into conflict because you can.
But then if the other side has something to say, you're either defensive or impatient or codependent,
Yeah. And that's actually, that's where we're heading after this we have one more lesson about evangelism. And then we're actually gonna do a whole workshop on conflict.
Woo!
And so
We're all gonna cage fight.
that's not the right kind of conflict.
Yeah.
So any thoughts from anybody online? Good.
And anyone on the chat?
They do love work.
Anybody online? No.
What?
Gerald said thumbs down.
No, don't confuse, that was Rebecca.
Don't say that, Cheryl.
Cool, okay.
Oh, you heard that? That was,
No.
You wanna know the deception question? Are you a bad listener? Do you show kindness? And do you think we need a listening exercise?
Okay, that was definitely great. The second one, the first one was good. The exercise was good. The second one paraphrased mega.
Are you codependent? Oh, I'm sorry.
Whoa.
I know, Ashley.
I'm working on it. I'm a work in progress. God knows my heart.
Well, bad listener, I thought it was room 216.
We found that out.
Or
But we had a meeting.
On a text message.
What's the room number? 460.
Anyway, as our terrible listeners continue to be terrible listeners. Thank you.
Your answers are valid.
No, we were talking about stages of like building relationships. And specifically like ultimately we want to study the Bible with people, but how do we actually get to that point? Because a lot of times we're like, hey, do you want to study the Bible? And they're like, no. All right, cool. I'll circle back later. And in 6 months we come back and we're like, okay, then what about now? And we've done nothing to help them see God in that time. And so we talked about the first one is showing people God's love. And so just finding ways to serve other people and show them like, hey, like I this is what God calls me to love you. And so I just wanted to serve you, I wanted to buy your food. I wanted to, you know, pull in your trash cans, whatever it is, finding ways to serve people. And then the second one was building a relationship. And we focused on like the most important thing is that we listen to people, like that we ask questions and that we listen to people and actually hear what they're saying. And so we talked about 5 different listening pitfalls. So being impatient, jumping to conclusions, being patronizing, getting defensive, and becoming codependent were kind of the 5. And then we talked about working on the skills of being able to active listening and kind of the concept of like, you know, giving verbal responses, you know, tracking, whatever, and then reading body. So that was the 5-minute summary. It is recorded, so. Get all that juicy deeds.
Do you mean codependent as like I rely on them?
Yes, so codependency means fostering relationships in which we take inappropriate responsibility for another's thoughts, feelings, beliefs, or behaviors. So it's the idea that like, in order for you to feel like you're making progress and you're like doing well, that person has to be doing well. So, yeah. Yeah, we had a guy in Pittsburgh who like was really close to one of the girls in the campus ministry, and she was like, I mean, she struggled with bipolar, so she was like some days she'd be doing great, sometimes days she would tank, but he was so emotionally attached to her that when she was doing great, he was doing great. When she was in the dumps, he was like, it was the point where like she would have a bad day and would be like wrestling with something, and he would like literally he would tear up because he was so emotional about where she like not being able to help her. And so it's an inappropriate level of like attachment.
They weren't dating, that.
Yeah.
Nor did they have any interest in dating.
Yeah.
Who needs people?
They're, yeah, I knew we talked about.
Yeah.
That's uncomfortable.
She's one of my good friends, but it was just crazy because they weren't even like, there was no romantic connection there.
Yeah.
I was like, how was the thing?
Right, it's an emotional relationship. But, yeah, that's kind of the idea. That sucks.
What songs?
Gives me-
How's this?
Hey, Michelle.
Yeah, there came a.
Hey, sorry, little kid crying.
You good?
It's funny because a lot of sales in general is less talking, more listening. You know, we're trained more so to ask questions and listen than throw a spit like a pitch. Because people don't respond to pitches. Like it's more about understanding what they desire, what they want, what they find important, what they love, what drives them. And
Yeah.
not until understanding that do you get to really either build that relationship with them or get anywhere with that relationship. So in the same way with discipleship, you know, I don't want to say discipleship is sales because it's not. There's grace behind it. And you know, there's no commission. Well, there slightly is. You know, they get to go to heaven, you get to another brother or sister to go to heaven with you, but in the same respect, like it's all about, it all comes down to listening. That's for sure.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you're volunteering to do our listening workshop here in a little bit.
Ego has loves the chat.
Well played, sir. That didn't sound good. Well, let's do that. Cool. Well, cool. We'll close out with some announcements. Church this Sunday is at 10:30 downstairs, room 154. It's gonna be popping. We got a lot of new stuff. So we're switching to YouTube. It's gonna, yeah, lot of stuff that I'm excited about. Anyway, we're also, after church this Sunday, we're going to Lexington. I have to preach there. So anybody who wants to go to Lexington for a day trip, we're gonna leave probably shortly after church on Sunday. Lexington's great.
Prior to kids, I would have gone with you for sure.
Just bring them.
In the car to Lexington?
No, in his car. Lexington. Not my car. My car's like falling apart.
I know.
Lexington is awesome.
Other announcements, Tri-State Bible Talk is tomorrow night at 7:30 over at the Hobsons. It's gonna be sweet. I have free snacks, so pretty great. We are doing our Huntington Friendsgiving on the 18th. So not this Friday, but next Friday. We're doing it at the Hobsons at 4 p.m. If you have not gotten the sign up yet, I don't think there's like a sign up thing. I think it's just saying what you're gonna do, what you're gonna bring. So yeah, talk to somebody about about that if you're interested. Also, November 19th, there's a food bank service opportunity. So we're gonna go help out at the food bank. That's at 8 AM on Saturday. Not this Saturday, but next Saturday, 9 AM. Oh, man, you get to sleep in a little bit. Yeah, other than that, the church calendar is coming soon. So, we will have a kind of the next 4 months planned out in detail. We will have the next year planned out roughly. But the church calendar will come out soon, so once I get all of the dates, I will let you know. Yeah, anything I missed? Cool. Sweet,
Oh, wait, yeah, there's the paint party next Sunday.
yes, yeah. Next Sunday? No, it's the 20th.
Is anyone invited to Friendsgiving?
Yeah, anybody.
I think everyone.
Like guests?
Yeah.
Friends?
You have to ask Pearl, but I think.
Okay,
I'm gonna say yes and, get in trouble if it's wrong. So,
What
but,
time is it?
4 PM at the Hobsons. Dinner is served at 6.
So there will be games.
No, that's just, you wanna come at 4, come at 4. I don't know those games, you have to ask Pearl.
Yeah. All questions are funneled to Pearl Hobson, so. Yeah, and then the ladies paint night is November 20th. It's after church on Sunday. We'll be over in Charleston, so it's $5. If you need the link to register, let me know. And for the guys, I'm gonna be there because I have to drive. So I'm thinking B-dubs. I'm thinking guys party at B-dubs. So yeah, if anybody's gonna have to stick around to drive their wife or girlfriend back, come hang out with me at B-dubs, or else I'll just sit there by myself, all alone and sad. Okay. Me and Landon will go to B-dubs.